MMOs are admittedly not in the best spot right now. I'm sure that's of no surprise to any of you currently watching. I've played every single MMO, major MMO release of the last year, of the last several years, really. And over the course of the last 12 months, I've been disappointed. I'm sure a lot of you have been disappointed as well. The most recent MMOs that released were Throne and Liberty, which is kind of like the poor man's Black Desert Online. Terrasland, which was an overwhelming disappointment. It was essentially like a dollar store or Walmart version of World of Warcraft that was also cross-platform compatible with mobile. Then Grand Saga released, and that was just an autoplay mess. It looked great graphically, but that was it. That was genuinely it. And then more recently, actually, just a few days ago, Blade and Soul Neo launched. And Blade and Soul Neo was just Blade and Soul with what was essentially a shader thrown over it and some features removed. That has been pretty much my general experience in MMOs for the last year. I've been wanting something new. I've been wanting something fun. And then I went into Crystal of Atlan. My wife, Mrs. STIX, did a dedicated video on it, I think like a year and a half, 2 years ago, when they were holding a Chinese beta test, or the global beta test, but within China or something. I don't remember the specifics. And honestly, it didn't really look that good to me. But after having played it for over a week now, the most recent full official global closed beta test, I can say with almost certainty this is probably the most fun MMO that I've played in the last year. That doesn't mean it's the best looking MMO. It doesn't mean it is the best MMO. It just means, to me, it is the most fun I've had in a while. Now, this is not a gacha game. This is, interestingly enough, a game that is very much like Dragon Nest. Anyone here that has played Dragon Nest, I'm sure the vast majority of you, anyone here that has played Soul Worker Online, that has played Closers Online, PSO2, not New Genesis, but the original PSO2, that has played Elsword. These are all hub MMOs, where you can see probably like a dozen, maybe a couple dozen different players all occupying a small hub space together. While Crystal of Atlan isn't necessarily that, it is probably the closest thing to it that I can make a comparison to. This game is semi-open world, semi-hub based. And by that I mean you can run around the world. There are dozens of different areas that you can explore, all very diverse, all very pretty aesthetically. And you will see tons of people, not a dozen, not 2 dozen, literally 100 people. You will see so many. These zones are absolutely packed with people. And that really drives home that MMO feeling. Now, at the same time, this is also a hub MMO, which means that, yeah, technically, these people you will see out in the hubs, out in these areas, and there aren't combat zones that you find around the world that you can freely explore with other players as well. Instead, as an extension of being a hub MMO, you deploy yourself along with a friend, multiple different friends, and tackle content in an instance. That is where the hub aspect comes into play, because while there are, again, incredibly large open areas that you can explore, and you can explore with other people, the main bulk of the content does take the form of dungeon grinding, dungeon running, dungeon crawling, completing battles, whether they're just a single boss battle, waves of different enemies, running through instances, looting treasure chests. And this might dissuade some of you from playing. This might be of little interest to some of you, but for those of us that have played Dragon Nest and that grew up on these kinds of MMOs, this is a ton of fun. Before we go any further, I do want to take a moment here to thank all of my incredible patrons over on Patreon and my YouTube channel members who allow for me to continue to do dedicated videos like this every single day. You guys are absolutely phenomenal, and I genuinely cannot thank you all enough for the support. I did mention that this isn't a gacha game, and that's because it's not technically a gacha game. There is a style of gacha present, and that is in the form of loot boxes. Now, there's no gacha for like characters, there's no gacha for weapons or anything like that. This is an MMO. This game has classes. You can choose your class, you can play as that class, you can alter your class and advance to other classes, you can customize your character. This is an MMO. This is not a gacha game. The combat is complete action. Interestingly, it is actually a fairly good action combat system. It's fast, it's relatively fluid, special effects look good. There's a lot of class diversity, a lot of ability diversity. There are talent trees and skill trees. Although I will point out, because I know you've been looking at the background footage and you probably noticed the UI. The UI is arguably the worst part of the game. It definitely feels a little bit mobile-ish, and that is because this is a cross-platform MMO between PC and console, or PC and mobile rather, just like Tower of Fantasy or Genshin Impact or Wuthering Waves. The latter two, of course, which were not MMOs, the former of which was. The UI, I very strongly hope they listen to feedback here and alter the UI when the game officially launches, because the UI is, I'm just disgusting. There, I'm being honest with you, it looks terrible. It is cluttered. It obscures way too much of the screen when I want to actually see what I'm playing. But outside of the terrible UI, the game is completely dubbed in English. Everything is translated in English. The boss battles are surprisingly good, like very good. The bosses aren't ridiculous damage sponges. The combat is decent. The actual boss fights themselves are mechanically challenging. A lot of this just took me by complete surprise. I personally don't think an MMO needs to be an open world MMO to be successful, to be good. I think there are several different types of MMOs, and each style of MMO caters to a different demographic of player. We have hub MMOs like Dungeon Fighter Online, Soul Worker Online, PSO2, Dragon Nest. This appeals to a style of player that is disinterested in open worlds, and there are many players that have that same mentality. And there are games like Rift, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, Ion, Black Desert that'll have enormous open worlds where you can freely see other players and engage in content with other players, where you're not restricted to hubs or partying with them to actually tackle content together or to see other players tackling content. That also applies to a very large demographic of players. But while this game might not be your cup of tea because it doesn't have an open world, that doesn't mean it's not fun. It doesn't mean it's not good. This, on the contrary, seems surprisingly good. Not incredible, but surprisingly entertaining. This is a game that, because it doesn't have any autoplay whatsoever, it is a full manual game, was a lot of fun to just waste time in. And that is something that Throne and Liberty really wasn't for me. That is something that Terrasland wasn't, Blade and Soul Neo wasn't. At the end of the day, I like being able to tackle games casually, and this game seems very much like a casual MMO. One where I can spend 15 minutes each day playing, one that I can spend, 2-3 hours each day playing. I didn't think Crystal of Atlan admittedly would be an MMO that I would have enjoyed. I was totally preparing to do a video talking about how much I disliked it, because I thought it was going to be an autoplay game. I thought it was going to be a, like a mobile game, but it's not. And I can happily say this game caught me by surprise. And I will definitely play the next test phase if there is one, or actually dedicate a little bit of time to it at launch. Again, this game is not going to be for everyone, especially if you don't like hub MMOs, or if you're looking for a massive open world to play and explore with other people. Hey, where do you think you're going? I see what you're doing there. I see you navigating on over, scrolling on over to that X button. Don't you dare. What I need you to do is take a moment and click one of the videos that are about to appear as soon as I'm done talking. And trust me, you're gonna want it.